Okay, today in honors, higher algebra, which is like algebra 2. We are actually doing algebra 2. This isn't just algebra. This is going to be not super easy, but hey, you signed up for the honors class. You wanted a challenge, right? We're going to stick 3 into the f function. To do that, grab this function, and then you rewrite this x as an empty parenthesis squared, and then you drop in 3, and then you get 9. Raise your hand if you had 9. Okay, awesome. That was easy. Now stick a minus 2 into that same function and multiply it all out. If you were like, I don't really get what you mean, Mr. Server, but you copy the function down and you replace the x with an empty parenthesis like I just said, then you just stick the a minus 2 in here. And then you just multiply it out. But the problem is a lot of kids think it's a squared minus 4, and it's not. It's not even a squared plus 4.
It's the other thing.
It's a minus 2 times a minus 2. That's what squared means, right? So then multiply it all out and get the answer. And then in a moment, I'm going to have you compare that answer with the kid sitting next to you. I'll pause for a minute while you give that a shot. So for this one, I gave you a ludicrous amount of time to be able to do this. Should have been able to get there done. A squared, and then minus 2a, and then the outside one. I always said that the inside and the outside one were the most important. Negative 2a, and negative 2a makes negative 4a, and then negative 2 times negative 2 means plus 4. There's your final answer. You just stuck this into the f function and evaluated it. A lot of times your answers come out with variables in this class. All right, this one, they did not tell us the x. In problem 2, if they didn't tell us the x, they must have told us the y, except y kind of looks funny. It's g of x. This is really like telling you y. All right, so go put the 5 in the right place, not in the x, and solve. Well, here's the g of x function. You don't put it in the x. So instead, you put a 5 right there, and I have 5 equals absolute value of x, and you're supposed to know how to solve that. Break it into 2 parts. You got 2 answers yet? X equals 5, x equals negative 5, because what's under the scribble here could either have been 5 or negative 5. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Okay, awesome. Now, last time we got into charts and graphs, and then f of x equals 3, and then you were like, did they give me the x or did they give me the y? But this time, we're going to be making one function eat another function. Gentlemen, that's not going to work. If you're going to talk during this time, I'm going to seat you separate from each other. All right. So f of g of x means the f function ate the g of x function. I want you to picture it like that, like it's a fish. Like this fish, the f fish, he ate the g of x fish. Do you think that happens in the ocean? All the time. You got a fish that eats a smaller fish. And I want you to think about this. Imagine a little tiny fish that gets eaten by a little bigger fish. Then do you think in the same day in the ocean, you might have a little bigger fish eats that fish? And then an even bigger fish eats that fish? I betcha, while I've been talking, there's a scenario where a tiny fish got eaten by a bigger fish, got eaten by a bigger fish, got eaten by a bigger fish, where it's like 4 deep. You know, there's a little tiny one inside of a bigger one, inside of a bigger one, inside of a bigger one. All right, so that's kind of what this is like. So the f function ate the g function. The way we say that is f of g of x. So like this is like of f of g of x. All right, that's how you say it. So if I wanted you to do f of g of x, which one got eaten? Look, he's inside the other one. Which one got eaten? G of x. All right. Next page. So here's f of g of x. We want the f function to eat the g function. So the way I recommend this is you just write out what the f function is, but not the f of it, just this part. Just write out that part. Then instead of the x, what have I been telling you to put instead of the x? An empty parentheses, in case you hadn't heard that. And then that's your f function. It's the predator. It's going to eat the smaller function. It doesn't have to always be smaller, but in math world. But it's eating the g function. When, again, this is not really the g function. That's the label for it. That's the g function. So it eats that. So that goes inside. And do I really need a parentheses and an absolute value? No. But sometimes it matters. That's why I say to always put it in parentheses. And then, yeah, you'd quickly drop those. And the answer would just be x plus 6. That's it. Your answer has a variable in it. That is what happens if f eats g. Now, I want you to skip this one for a second and go to this one. Now, it's a reversal. G is going to eat the f function. Start by writing the g function. Make it have an empty spot where the x was. And make it eat the f function. Then simplify it. In my class, you always simplify your answers. So I don't need to tell you, do you have to simplify that? Yes, always. Always get your answer and simplify it. Okay. So here's f of x. He's getting eaten by the g function. So I start with the g function. Right there. Put an empty spot where the variable is. Make him eat the f function, which is right there. Do I really need both the parenthesis and the absolute value? No. So I could just drop that out. My final answer is the absolute value of x plus 6. How many of you had that before I said it? Cool. These aren't that hard. Now this one definitely looks weirder, but it's actually easier. When I've given you a multi-part problem, I always tell you just do one step at a time. Where do you think we should start? Yes. Yeah. Do that. Just figure out g of negative 10. Just figure out g of negative 10 and then write it down. Write it down. G of negative 10. Okay, so negative 10 goes here, and then you got a plus 6, and then you got negative 4. Then that's negative 4. Now, what do you think the new problem is? Figure out f of negative 4. We already figured that out. It's negative 4. Now it's f of negative 4. So stick negative 4 into the f function, which is that absolute value one. What is f of negative 4? Well, I go find the f function. And it's the absolute value of what? Well, negative 4. Final answer, 4. Who had 4 before I said it? Cool. I think you're getting this. If you really are, you should be able to do the first two relatively easy. But part C might kick your butt. Give it a shot. And I'll be there to catch you when you fall. If you fall. Think of it as you have a rope on. You can't really get hurt. I'll pause for a sec. Okay, let's see how you did. You stick the negative 1 in the f function. It goes here, but that's just to label it. F of negative 1 is, well, negative 1 squared is 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. So you should have gotten 3 for this. But then you're not done, because then you got to do g of 3. So g of 3, 3 goes in here. That's just labeling it. G of 3 is, 5 times 3 is 15, minus 1 is 14. Raise your hand if you had 14. Awesome. The other one, you stick in 2 into the g function. So that goes here. And 5 times 2 is 10, minus 1 is 9. That's 9. And then I now do f of 9. 9 then goes in here. 9 squared is 81, plus 2, 83. Who had that? Right. Okay, excellent. Then, what the heck is this? All right. F G of f of x is how I say that. G of f of x is 29. That means if I make the g function eat the f function, if I make the g eat the f, it'll equal 29. So this left side I can do. I can make the g eat the f. Here's the g. I go 5 parentheses minus 1, and then I make it eat the f, which is x squared plus 2. That is where g just ate the f function. Are you with me so far? And that equals 29, and then you just solve. So you add 1 to both sides, 5, x squared plus 2. And I know a lot of people just are like, I'm going to distribute that. Don't do it, because next I can divide both sides by 5. And then I don't even ever have to distribute it. X squared plus 2 equals 6. And then that breaks up into two things. X plus, wait, it's in parentheses. It's in parentheses. I thought it was absolute value. Sorry. It's in parentheses. So then I'm going to drop those parentheses. You can do that if there's nothing you can do in it and there's nothing being multiplied by it. You can just drop the parentheses. And now I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides to set it equal to 0. And I'll have x squared minus 4 equals 0. And a lot of people right here get stuck. Anybody know what to do? I have my first moment. A lot of really smart kids are stuck, and if you can factor it, you should. I know, some of you are thinking of other ways. That's true, there's other ways. But couldn't I factor this into x plus 2 and x minus 2? Equals 0, and then I know the two answers. Do you see how easy that was if you noticed that factoring was a thing? If you can factor it, you should. I know, there's another way. But this way, it's going to be hard to argue that there's anything easier than this. Because this makes sure I get both answers. A lot of people do it the other way, and then they only remember one of the answers. Here, it'll be obvious. There's two answers. -2 and 2. And again, I know there's another way. But factoring is awesome. All right. Any questions? Yes?
Did you zoom out?
Yep. Now, I know some of you were like, but I multiplied the 5 out. Why? It wasn't a great idea. You could. It's not illegal. But the best way to do it would have been to add 1 to both sides. And then divide both sides by 5. Subtract 6. And then you got x squared minus 4 equals 0. And then if you can factor it, you should. All right. Now again, for some of you that were like, but I did it this way. It's cool as long as you showed work and you got both answers. Okay. So do you get higher algebra is definitely a step up. You got more steps. To do this one, you had to know how to put a function in another function, and you had to know how to, like the easy part was to solve the equation. And that involved factoring. All told, that was about, I'd say, 5 steps. Typical pre-calc question, 15 steps. That's why pre-calc's way harder than this class. Is just because you got a lot longer equations to solve. That's usually really what it boils down to. Pre-calc's just got so many more steps. This had like 5. In the old days when you did algebra, you'd probably just have 2 steps. This class, you're typically going to have like 5-ish. And when you get to pre-calc, it's more like 10 to 15 steps. Especially in the second semester of pre-calc. Okay, let's move on. Here's one of those chart dealy bobs. Let's see if you remember how to do this. When I have a difficult problem, I just try to do one thing at a time. G of 5 is how I would start. Well, as soon as I know it's G, I'm just crossing this off because I know it's G. So I'm going to focus on that. And then it says G of 5. Very tempting to grab that, but that's not right. G of 5 means that its x value was 5. So you use the g function, and I think highlighting it shows this pretty well. You use the g function, and you use the x is 5. Maybe I should use a different color. Here. And where do those two overlap? At the -4. So that's the answer. But wait, I got -4. That's just for this part. Now it's -4 for that part, squared because of this. And then the final answer was actually 16. Did anybody have 16 before I said it? Sweet. Okay. I don't feel like we need to review this a ton. Now, of course, there's probably a kid that could benefit from that, but you should ask me and come up in the front and get help, because I think most people are going to be fine on this. We do not need to do A, B, C, D, and E. Let's just do one more. Let's make sure that almost everybody gets B right. If you've already done B, forgive me. It'll just take kids a minute to catch ya. Do B. Okay, step 1 is to do G of -1. Here's the G, here's the -1, and you get 5. And then it's F of 5. That's a completely separate question, so I'm wiping this out. Now it's F of 5. So I'm going to use the F and the 5, and that answer is 2. Raise your hand if you had 2. Cool. Question.
So why doesn't it become -5?
Okay, it said G of -1.
Oh, well, actually, never mind. I get it.
You get it now?
I
Okay.
was thinking you multiplied.
All right. Yeah, there was no multiply in there. Nope. Okay. All right, let's move on. This is the kind that kicked almost everybody's butt last time. By the end, I was getting a little less than half the class was still able to do it. So we better practice this kind. Remember how I had you write something underneath this, like you have to look this up on the chart, like F of 3 equals 2, or whatever the chart tells you. And then you had to go, oh, so these equal each other? Remember, that's my tip. Try to figure out F of what equals 2 and write it underneath. And then see if you can solve for S. S is a terrible variable because it looks like a 5. But that's what they did. So we'll go with it. For those that still aren't getting this, F of something, I don't know which one, but I'll figure it out in a second. F of something is 2. F of 5 is 2. See? And that leads me to believe that this must equal 5. 2s plus 3 equals 5. So 2s equals 2, s equals 1. Raise your hand if you had s equals 1. Awesome! Almost everybody this time. You can learn. Sweet. Seriously, only maybe one person got it right the first time we tried this kind. Okay. And you guys are quick learners, and that's probably one of the reasons you can handle honors. But imagine how quick a baby AI can learn. They're learning even faster than humans. And the little AIs that are out there that are being trained, they can read 1,000 books in like a minute. It's insane. So it won't take long before AIs are smarter than humans. They aren't yet. In some things, they're better than humans, no doubt. Like looking stuff up, reading things, memorizing things. But thankfully, we still got them beat on a lot of stuff. All right, moving on. This one is just asking you to do those nested kind again. You didn't know how to do that when you walked in today, but I think you've got it now. Let's just verify. Do number 1, f of g of 4. f of g of 4. All right, so I'd start with g of 4. Go sticking a 4 in there. 4 to the third is 64. Kind of a pain in the butt. 4 times 4, 16 times 4, 64. Now it's f of 64. I go over here, and that is square root of something, and it's square root of whatever you stick in, which we're sticking in 64. Is there a nice clean answer for that? Yes? 8. And some sad kids are going to be like, isn't it plus and minus 8? No. It's because somebody's made you think that because of teaching you this kind of thing and going, and then saying, oh, it's plus and minus 10. No, it's not. The square root of 100 is just 10. And the square root of x squared is the absolute value of x. That's complicated to explain, but I really wish they would have said that. And then maybe you wouldn't think there's 2 square roots. There's only 1. Okay. And the final answer was 8. Okay, I think you're getting this. So we have a, this is not homework. Why? Because I honestly just want you to work on it during class and then to not do anything over the weekend. Okay? This is not homework. There's no Dropbox for it. This is just some practice you could do on this in class because I believe this weekend is Rosh Hashanah. So that means you all get to not have to do any homework over this weekend. Then on Monday, we will pick this stuff up again and start over again on Monday, review it a little bit, and then the test is coming on Tuesday of next week. You have now learned everything that you needed to know to take a test on this stuff. So we're starting the review process on Monday, and then you take the test on Tuesday. Questions? What's the question? Oh, bathrooms. Okay. Let me see that it's been used. And next time, wait until I say yes, but yes, go ahead. All right, and that is all I have for the video for today. There's a practice page of problems you should work on in class, and then that's it. No homework.